So, should we fast forward to Jesus real quick?
Well, I was about to read Matthew 5. So
Okay.
if you want to start there, we can.
So Matthew 5.
Sermon on the Mount.
Okay, go for it. Go for it, please.
Okay. Matthew 5, start on 38. I'll read verses. You have heard that it was said, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist. Actually, sorry, I'm going to read this in the ESV. Here we go. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other one also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. You've heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? You therefore must be perfect to your heavenly Father.
So I'm super glad that you brought this up, because not only does it apply to what I'm just saying, but it's going to apply to what I'm about to say. Anything more from the Sermon on the Mount that you wanted to go over?
It's probably, if I had to pick one passage from the New Testament if I had to give up every other passage in the New Testament, and could pick one passage I could only read for the rest of my life, it'd be the Sermon on the Mount.
Oh, I 100% agree. 100% agree.
I'm just looking through it right now. So give me 1 second. Yeah, I'll read the end. This is Matthew 7, start in 24.
Okay.
And this goes back to faith and works conversation we had.
Yeah.
Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat on that house. But it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat against the house. And it fell, and great was the fall of it. And when Jesus finished these sayings, the crowds were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority and not as the scribes.
So that was the end of the Sermon on the Mount. And then just a few stories later in Matthew 8, we get Jesus leading his followers across the sea to the Decapolis, across the Sea of Galilee. So we have Jesus heal a leper, we have him heal a centurion's servant, and he heals many.
Oh man, I'm sorry. Yeah,
you're good.
Anyway, I think that story is super important for the conversation.
No, it really is, because he heals the centurion's servant. And I don't know if it's in this account or another account of the same encounter in one of the other gospels, but Jesus says, okay, show me the way, we'll go, I'll heal your servant or whatever. And the man says, recognizing that Jesus can't enter his house under Jewish law and not be unclean, he says, no, just say it. I'm one who has authority. You seem to have authority. You speak it, and I will trust that it has happened. And then Jesus, commences faith, all that jazz. Jesus is talking about, in the Sermon on the Mount, loving people who you think are outside of God's covenant, right? We just talked about that in the Sermon on the Mount. He's talking about, the Gentile, the outsider. He then does something for an outsider. He actively heals for an outsider. So he's showing his disciples, right? He's saying to his disciples, this is what we're supposed to do.
Not just an outsider, an enemy.
An enemy, a vicious enemy, the oppressor.
One who commands armies of the Romans who are oppressing the Jewish people.
Currently.
And it is likely that his servant might have been a Jew.
Yeah. And so, but this centurion has enough compassion to want that servant healed. The centurion is crossing the racial boundary to love, and Jesus is recognizing that, and he likewise is crossing the boundary too. And so then we have Jesus say, okay, let's go to the Decapolis. So let's take this same story, but in the Gospel of Mark. Because I know the details in Mark a little bit better than I know them in.
All right. I just have to read. Well, I'll go there in just a second.
Yeah,
I just have to read this.
Go for it.
He says, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. And he said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion replied, Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the words and my servant will be healed. For I too am a man under authority with soldiers under me. Roman soldiers, let's not forget. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he marveled, just like the crowds. He marveled and said to those who followed him, truly, I tell you, no one in Israel, with no one in Israel have I found such faith.
I tell you, many will come from east and west and will eat with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. And you want to see how Jesus puts that into practice?
It's no wonder that they didn't kill him sooner.
Yeah. So then Jesus, just a few.
So you're in Mark. Where are you in Mark?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm in Mark chapter 4, verse 35. Okay. And this happens in the Matthew narrative later, but I think the story's a bit longer in Mark, and so it helps us kind of has a few more details that I think are interesting when taking in light Jonah's the backstory that we've laid for Jonah. So let me know when you're there.
No, I am there. Go ahead.
So starting in verse 35, on that day, when evening had come, he said to them, let us go across to the other side. Now, the other side is a technical term that they used in the religious triangle, which is a selection of Jewish cities in the Galilee that were very devout. So the other side is a technical term referring to the Decapolis, or the land of the seven, which is where all the pagans lived. It was a Greek settlement. So Jesus is taking a bunch of religious, racist Jews across to the land of their oppressors after he just preached a sermon and performed a miracle about loving your enemy and crossing these boundaries. And Marty Solomon in Bamos suggests that this Greek phrase, and I don't know Greek yet, so I can't confirm or deny, but he says that this Greek phrase in 36 is a little hard to translate and might indicate some strife between Jesus and his disciples about the decision to go to the Decapolis. So in 36, and leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. So that's a little kind of a confusing statement. And so I'm inclined to agree with Marty just because that's a weird way to word that. And other boats were with them. That's also interesting. believe Brent does some interesting stuff with the other boats in the podcast. So now, again, any large open body of water is the pits of hell. If you were in Galilee and you wanted to go to the Decapolis for some reason, Jews didn't, but if you did, you could just walk there. You would legitimately walk around the sea. It'd take you a day-ish, and that's what you would do.
Again, you could walk there, but Jesus says we're not walking.
Go on the boat. And Marty suggests that Jesus didn't just have to say, let's go on the boat. He said, get in the boat. And his disciples were like, fine, okay. So,
all right, read 37, because I think people are picking up on this.
And a great windstorm arose, and waves were breaking into the boat. That's actually something that was said in the book of Jonah. So the boat was already filling, but he was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. Who else have we known that was asleep on a cushion in the middle of a storm?
Going across the sea to somewhere that he necessarily didn't want to go. Not Jesus, but his disciples.
Yeah, but that people in the boat didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And they woke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And he awoke and rebuked the wind and the sea, and said to the sea, Peace, be still. Now, there's a lot of things going on with the Psalms there that Marty gets into in his podcast on this. But what's super interesting, right, is who is the one who calmed Sheol, the pit, Ta'om, in the beginning? God. And so when the disciples freak out later, I've always thought, well, that's silly. They've seen him heal people. Like, why are they freaking out that he can do this too? 2 + 2 = 4. No. The Psalms explicitly say, and Genesis 1 explicitly says, only God can do that. And this whole lesson has been framed around, one, we've had a whole narrative, right, about Jesus' authority. Right? So Jesus has authority, the centurion has authority, who recognizes Jesus' authority. But then, so here we have this final like nail in the coffin of authority. But then we also have coupled with it this image of Jonah running from his call, and this whole racial, hatred of the other, Jesus trying to bring the Gentiles into the fold, the enemy into the fold, loving the enemy. And so we have Jesus actively walking out the story of Jonah with his disciples, teaching like a Jewish teacher, like a rabbi would do. And he's saying, guys, like, not only am I God, but I'm saying this is our mission, to go get them. And there are some more key pieces that fall later in the Gospels that solidify this. And then this is where Jesus shows up and he heals the demon-possessed man, the Gerasene demoniac, and the spirits go into the pigs and they go into and all that. So he goes there and he performs a miracle, and then they run him off. Yeah. But I think the important point, at least for us to sit with today, is Jesus is intentionally crossing boundaries, and he's using Jonah to get his disciples to do the same. When Jesus is referencing Jonah here, I think he's referencing that conclusion we came to in chapter 4. He's citing chapter 1 and 2, right? But he's implying the ending with everything he's framing around this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we miss it, right? We don't pick up on that really. We think of this as like, oh, Jesus is proving that he's God, or oh, Jesus is, performing a miracle and his disciples are so dumb, they just don't get it. But there's a lot more going on here.
Yeah. I don't know if I have anything else to say on that point. Yeah, it's just sad to me that we've made Jonah about a fish.
Yeah. Yeah. When it's so complex and Jesus uses it in so many unique and compelling ways.
Okay. On that note, let's go. We can end and we can have a little. I'll have a little spiel.
I've got about 10 minutes roughly.
Yeah. I'm watching the clock.
Yeah. No, you're good. I hate that we ran this late on stuff.
All right, Matthew 12. And some of the scribes and the fair, keep in mind, and I've talked about this whole half of Matthew 12 is a big discussion between Jesus and the Pharisees about by what power he does what he does.
And
he just healed the demon-possessed man, and then they come up and they say, oh no, it's by Beelzebul that he casts out demons. And then Jesus does his famous House of Vikings and stuff, cannot stand, right?
well, and what's super interesting too, right, is that this whole Jonah thing has also been tied to his authority in the past, like we just referenced.
Yes. Okay, but I want to point out something that I think is, again, it's like, it's no wonder they didn't kill him sooner. Okay? Like, all right, here we are. Matthew 12. I'm going to start in also everything he says in the paragraph before this about a tree is known by its fruit. And in the comparison of trees and fruit, he calls them a brood of vipers.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, you get what Jesus is doing here, all right? And what does it say after this? They've had this whole discussion about demon possession and exorcism and all this stuff. And it says, and then some of the scribes and the Pharisees answered him, saying, Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you, as if you didn't already get one, but okay. But he answered them, an evil and adulterous generation seeks a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. This is what's interesting. The men of Nineveh will rise up at the judgment of this generation and condemn it. For they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and behold, something greater than Jonah is here. And I'll read the next verse too. The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment of this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. Behold, something greater than Solomon is here. Can you read that? Actually, I'll go back. Matthew 8.
Matthew 8?
Yeah.
Let me go back there. What part of Matthew 8?
Verse 10 and 11.
10 and 11.
When Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, truly, I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from the east and the west and recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. And what is Jesus proclaiming here? Look, you want a sign? You want to see something? Guess what? Those Gentile, murderous, adulterous, evil Ninevites who I saved, who repented, will rise up in judgment of this generation. Because I'm not just worried about the Israelite. I'm not just worried about the Jew.
Yep.
I'm worried about them all.
Yep.
And you can get mad like Jonah. You can get so mad that you're going to kill me. But Nineveh and the queen who came to Solomon, way outside of Jewish territory, way outside of Israel, comes to the sacred space of Israel, and believes. And I think what Jesus is begging us to see here, just like he said, you have heard it said, Love. Is it? I'll read it again. Matthew 5.
Love your friends, but hate your enemy.
Yes. You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. God, which just makes the parable of the Good Samaritan so much more interesting when you read that phrase into it.
Well, it's Jonah, right? I mean, that's literally Jonah. Is he's loving his friend and he's hating his enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus is saying, no, that's not enough. That's not what we're about.
You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. And the ultimate question of Jonah is this: what happens when God forgives our enemies?
Yeah.
What do we do? What is our reaction? And that tells us a lot about who we are.
And so
And the thing, I'll just say this will be my last thing. I'll feel like I'll do you all a disservice if I don't say it, but everybody wants an enemy, right? Everybody wants an enemy. Pick your group, pick your political party, pick whatever. Everybody wants an enemy. Because it's easy.
Yeah.
Having someone to hate, having someone to constantly point the finger at, having someone to blame for all the problems is easy. And sometimes, and here's the hard part, sometimes, maybe many times, those reasons you have are valid. Right?
Yep.
They're valid.
Yeah.
Of course the Jews hated the Romans. Look at what they're doing.
Yeah. They're crucifying you.
Of course.
Not just Jesus, but like others.
Yes. And everybody wants an enemy, right? That's why CNN and Fox News both love Donald Trump.
Yep. Yep.
Because to one, he's the friend, and to one, he's the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And they both gouge him for profit.
Yep.
And I think that the remarkable nature of Jesus is that he says, and these are terms that are coming back to our culture, I think, in ways that are true and in ways that are overused, but whether you're the oppressed or whether you're the oppressor, and I'm using this word deliberately, liberate you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I liberate you from your oppression, and I liberate you from your need to be an oppressor.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do about this? Here's the other thing. This is my last question I'll ask. Do we look at our enemies as if they're forgivable? Do we?
Yeah.
Do we really? I don't know, man. I find it really hard.
I do too.
I find it really hard.
And I've just got to say, I've heard a lot of politically motivated Christians read this phrase. You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. I've heard a lot of politically motivated Christians say, you should not have to love your oppressor. And I hear Jesus saying, and there's a lot of nuance to this, but I hear Jesus saying, no, you do. And in fact, that's the solution. That is how you partner with me in putting the world back together. And no, it's not easy. Of course, it's not easy. But that doesn't make it any less a Christian's responsibility.
And And don't get us wrong, this doesn't mean you don't call out things that are evil.
No.
People who
definitely.
are doing evil things.
What did Jonah do? Jonah went and called out. I mean, God even explicitly says in the beginning of the book, go
Their
preach.
evilness has risen before me. I see what they're doing.
This has come up in front of me. I see what they're doing. You're supposed to go and tell them what they need to do instead. Help them. And Jonah hates instead. And what the book of Jonah is doing, I think, is it's turning the microscope on the reader. And it's making you examine yourself, because what the original hearer of this would have thought was, oh yeah, that's my enemy. And oh, I see why Jonah's running. And oh, I get this. But silly Jonah for running from God. Silly Jonah from thinking that he could do it his own way. Why is Jonah so mad? And then at the very end, you realize that you're Jonah in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And you're the one. I mean, it ends, the literal book ends with a question. And it's kind of an awkward question too, right? Why are you mad that I'm saving this city of 12,000 people who don't know their right hand from their left, and also many animals? Like, that's a weird question. It just ends abruptly. And it's because you're supposed to sit in that and say, why are you mad that God loves the people that you hate? Why are you mad that God wants to forgive the people that you're bitter against?
And I'll just end with this. We can end with this question that I have.
Yeah.
Is there anything that would be greater than God bringing salvation to your enemy?
Yeah.
To put the world back together.
Yeah.
Would you not want that?
Yeah.
Truly.
Why would you not?
Why would you not want that?
Yeah.
As God says to Jonah about the
Yeah.
plan. Anyway, we got to leave it at that. Your wife's home, so.
Well, man, it's been good.
Yes. I didn't get everything I wanted to in, but I think it was well worth.
We'll try again next week.
We'll have to pick some. I mean, we can keep going if we want, but we can pick another subject too.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I think I'm good. I think I said everything I need to say. So.
Okay.
Unless you have more, but.
On this, no, I'm exhausted on the Jonah thing. I've run out of material, but yeah, no, we can do that other thing that you suggested, if you want. And then the question you had for today that we never got to. So.
Yes. All right. So let's do those. Let's do that.
Can you text me both of those? That way I can be thinking about them.
Yes, I will. Just snap me. Instagram me your phone number just so it'll be easier.
Yeah. I was actually going to suggest that too. So,
all right, man.
Anyway, I got to run, but I'll talk to you later.
And if you get Memento in, let me know.
Yeah, we'll do.
All right, see you later, man. Appreciate it.
Worldview. Cloudy when you sinking, got you thinking it's a whirlpool. Caesar in your pockets, you can't see who's in your pockets, but Stevie's inner visions touch your eyes and make